I love clowns, especially the scary ones, which to a lot of people, they're all scary. I'm not sure why, but the aesthetic of something being like super colorful and kid friendly, yet is actually incredibly evil and horrifying is super appealing to me for some reason. And I think that is reflected a lot in a lot of today's horror culture as well, with like mascot horror and stuff going on, with things like Five Nights at Freddy's and Poppy Playtime. Obviously, those aren't clowns necessarily, but child friendly things that are dangerous and evil. But taking something that's supposed to be fun and comforting for kids and twisting it in a dark way seems to resonate with a lot of people. Heck, in high school, I would even dress like an evil clown given any opportunity I had, whether it be Halloween or I can't think of a lot of other opportunities I would have on the top of my head, but at the time, I would just find any excuse I could and dress up like an evil clown. Basically, any situation that would permit it, just for fun. And then, of course, there was the whole evil clown craze in like 2016, which I never participated in, mind you, because I didn't want to be like, a menace to society, but I would occasionally go and in full evil clown makeup go knock on my friend's door who had extreme chlorophobia and really just kind of freak him out just for the fun of it, which in retrospect was probably pretty mean. But you know what? He's fine. Nowadays he says that instead of getting scared of clowns, he just gets angry at them, which whatever floats your boat, dude. And that all brings me to the subject of this video. For this spooky season, I wanted to talk about a horror movie that I feel is very underrated and not talked about enough. And it's probably my favorite evil clown movie. No, not this one. No, not this one either. No, not that one. No, not any of these. Okay, it's this one. It's just called Clown. Oh wait, there's multiple movies that are just called Clown. Great. No, okay, we're talking about the one from 2014. It was directed and written by John Watts and Eli Roth. So that one there. See, back in 2010, there was like a fake trailer to a movie called Clown that came out. It was really just to kind of get the idea of the movie across, but it was really cool. The premise was very simple, but it had me hungry for more. The trailer also said that it was directed by Eli Roth, which at the time was not true, but Eli Roth did see the trailer eventually, and he and Dimension Studios decided to make it into a full feature-length film. Again, it was directed and written by John Watts and Eli Roth, co-written by Christopher Ford. Clown is about a dad who has a son who, really likes clowns, and it's his birthday party. However, while he is out at like a house that he's trying to sell because he's like a real estate agent or something, he gets a call from his wife saying that the clown had canceled because it was double booked, I guess. Trying to figure out the best way to handle this situation, he ended up trying to make his own clown costume. He tries a couple different things that don't really work out, but then he finds this trunk at the house he's working at, and lucky enough, there's a clown costume in that. So he becomes the clown for his kid's birthday party. Everything is going super well. They have a blast at the party, and he's so exhausted by the end of the night, he ends up falling asleep in the clown suit. And then the next morning, he finds that he can't take it off. And I don't just mean he decided to go down a new career path as a clown. The costume physically won't come off. So if the premise interests you, I highly encourage you to go check out the movie for yourself. I believe it's available for free on Pluto right now, so definitely do that. And just be warned that the rest of the video will contain heavy spoilers for the rest of the film. So that being said, let's get back into the video. So as mentioned before, Kent, our main character here, played by Andy Powers, finds an old clown costume in the attic of a house that he's trying to sell, and he decides to put it on for his son Jack's birthday party. And like I said, the next day, the costume just won't come off. The wig, the nose, the suit, the makeup, none of it. But, life goes on, so he ends up having to do things like drop his kid off at school in the clown costume, go to work in the clown costume. He tries to kind of hide it a little bit underneath like a hat and like a big coat, and he even puts some of his like wife's makeup on to try to make his skin look like skin colored, but it's definitely still noticeable that this man's dressed like a clown underneath all of it. While he's at work, again, he sells houses and stuff. There's some other people working on the house, like fixing it up and everything. So he takes one of the like buzz saws or something, or an electric saw, and goes into the bathroom and tries to physically cut the costume off. He'll do things like stick it in his sleeve, and he ends up cutting his wrist pretty badly. So, great. And then after that genius idea, he decides to do something even smarter and just stick it down the collar of his shirt. Luckily, he doesn't slit his own throat at that point, but the saw does break completely, so now the costume's stronger than the electric saw, I guess. And he kind of freaked out that night. When he gets home, he tells his wife, Meg, played by Laura Allen, he tells her about the whole ordeal. I think she works at like a dentist office or something, and she decides, look, I'm going to help you get this clown costume off. It's what I do. So she gets like some sort of medical tool. It's like, they look like pliers almost, but used for the human body. She goes to try to pull the nose off, and after she tugs a little bit, he's like, ow, 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 and she's like, wow, really? That's on there, huh? And they decide to do it like a Band-Aid, and on the count of 3, she goes to just yank it off completely. She does yank off the clown nose. However, she rips off the skin of Kent's nose as well, and the clown nose goes flying through the air and lands in front of their dog, which eats it. But Kent's also just got all the flesh torn off of his nose, so he's in a lot of pain. So they bandage that up, and she's looking at the wig, and she's like, honey, when did you dye your hair? And he's like, I didn't dye my hair. And she's like, are you sure? Because this looks like actual hair, not a wig. Kent goes to the doctor, and the doctor pretty much just says he shouldn't have used such strong adhesive. He's like, I didn't use any adhesive. But they don't really seem to be taking the situation seriously too much. And by the way, during all this, Kent's got this insatiable appetite. He's pretty much eating everything he can come across and is still hungry. Officially fed up with the situation, Kent decides to go back to the house that he originally found the suit in, and it's only now that he realizes the trunk itself is actually chained to the wall. But he also does find some contact information for the brother of the guy who owned the house, and the guy who owned the house is deceased now, by the way. And he calls him and he's like, hey, I found this suit in your brother's attic. And the guy's like, do not put on that suit. And Kent's like, I'm wearing it. And then the guy on the phone, he immediately changes his tune from panic to, oh, yeah, okay, so that's fine. You'll be fine. It's normal for this suit to be hard to take off. Those old suits, they would like capture a lot of the moisture from your body and then get stuck to you. So that's completely normal. Come by my house. I'll help you get that thing off. And Kent is relieved by this. So he does show up at the address given. And that's where he meets Carlson, who's played by Peter Storp. When Kent meets Carlson, Carlson gives him some tea, and Kent's like, all right, let's get this suit off, right? And Carlson starts to tell him the origin of the clown. That the legend originally comes from Nordic regions of Europe, where a demonic monster called the Cloyne would live in the mountains up there and lure children in to its lair where it would eat them. And the Cloyne, Cloynes, they would eat 5 children a year, 1 for each month of winter. Kent is super confused as to why he's being told all this, and he starts to feel a little woozy after a moment. Realizing that the tea he was given was drugged, he passes out and then wakes up strapped to a table. Carlson's surprised to see he's awake, and he's like, oh man, really wish you would have been asleep for this. I'm about to cut off your head. Because apparently, according to Carlson, decapitation is the only way to kill the demon. Which he explains that is not a suit he is wearing, it is demon skin. From one of the coins. So if you put it on, it basically merges with you and makes you become the demon. But Kent, now with super strength, manages to break free of these restraints and he manages to tie Carlson up, throw him in the car, and he's going to go to the police station with him. But he decides to stop by his house first and I guess catch Meg and Jack up on the situation. However, when he shows up at the house and explains that the guy in his backseat just tried to murder him, he sees like a lot of his wife's family there, and it's almost like an intervention kind of situation. But he's sitting there trying to explain everything the best he can, and nobody's really believing him. So he decides, okay, I'm just going to take this guy to the police station. Meg, meet me there, please. And he takes off. But before he does, one of his, like, I guess brother-in-laws tries to, like, stop him. He puts his hand on him, and then Kent, trying to get the hand off, breaks the guy's arm so bad that the bone's sticking out. So yeah, freaked out after that just happened. He goes to the police station. But on the way to the police station, however, Carlson manages to try to choke Kent from behind with the rope that he's tied up with, and causing the car to crash. During the crash, they're pretty beat up. Carlson's not looking good, and Kent gets out. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, on the car ride, he notices that his feet are growing so large that they're ripping out of his shoes. Probably normal, right? Same with the hand, getting larger with claws, probably completely normal. But now, hanging on to life, Carlson is telling Kent to delete himself. Kent hears this at first, but then gets very distracted by seeing a child in the back seat of a car nearby that, you know, was there for the crash, almost in a hypnotized manner starts walking towards him. He is only snapped out of it when the kid's father, I assume, starts calling at him to see if he's okay. At that point, he realizes, wow, I was just hungry for a child, and then he runs off into the woods while Carlson's just telling him to delete himself the whole time. So from here, we cut to a group of Boy Scouts that are camping out in the middle of the woods. And granted, it never specifically states, I don't think, what day of the week all this is taking place on. However, I'm pretty sure it's a weeknight and a school night. I don't know why they're all camping in the middle of the woods on a school night, but whatever. One of the boys by the fire decides he needs to go clean his plate and has to walk like a quarter of a mile into the forest to do so, I guess. And that's where he sees Kent crouched over by a tree. He can hear his stomach growling, and Kent's just begging for some food. So, a little scared, the kid goes to hand him some of his leftovers, but then Kent grabs his hand and bites off a few of the kid's fingers. So the kid obviously was not a big fan of that and runs off, and Kent kind of just realizes what he did, and after he's finished snacking on his finger food, he also runs off. He ends up finding himself at like a gas station and goes into the bathroom where he vomits up the child bones. While he's there, of course, a school bus shows up full of children, and they're going to use that exact same bathroom. He hides in the stall, completely tempted by just like tearing these kids apart, essentially. But, he's trying to restrain himself. However, they're like knocking on the stall door, and eventually one like peeks over the stall, which, first of all, rude. Second of all, he screams, and Kent runs out, just trying to get away from the situation. Unsure of what to do, and knowing that he has a newfound hunger for child flesh, that sounded terrible, he goes to hide out in a apartment building that I guess he owns from, again, being like a real estate agent. He happens to have access to the keys for it, and as he's working on getting the door open, the sweetest little guy comes up to him named Robbie and introduces himself. Ain't he cute? Oh, he recognizes he's a clown. I'm sure nothing bad will happen to Robbie. Robbie asks the clown if he's hungry, because, he can hear his stomach growling, and Kent just kind of rushes inside to hide. So, coming to terms with the situation, he calls his wife to basically apologize and say goodbye, and realizing that the best way out of this is probably to, self-delete, he goes to off himself in probably one of the most entertaining ways I've seen in media. He has a firearm, puts it in his mouth, pulls the trigger, and a splatter of rainbow blood covers the wall behind him, which that's just fun. And he wakes back up and basically completely unharmed by the situation. And that's when he kind of realizes that, oh, Carlson was right. I probably have to decapitate myself. So after refusing some cereal from Robbie, aw, Robbie, he's so nice. On an awkward trip to Home Depot, he gets enough supplies to basically build himself a self-decapitation contraption, if you will. He's got to like lean backwards in a chair and basically fall on a couple buzzsaws to get the job done. And like someone who's about to drop in on a ramp for the first time on a skateboard, he is pretty nervous about the situation. So he hesitates a couple times before actually committing. Except right when he's about to commit, Robbie bursts in the door. It catches Kent off guard. He falls at a weird angle. The contraption falls over, and the saw blade goes right through Robbie's chest. Robbie! Horrified at first, he cradles the child, wondering how could it have possibly come to this. And then he tastes some of the blood on his fingers, and he's like, alright. And he closes the door, goes for a little midnight snack. But moments later, Meg pulls up, because after his very cryptic message, she decides she needs to find her husband. She's been going through all of the properties that Kent's owned, figuring that he's probably at a house that, he has the keys to. And she also believes that he is now the demon clown as well, because she ends up finding the book that Carlson was showing him, talking about like all the stuff, like the demon lore and everything, the Cloyne lore. And she sees that Carlson had actually worn the costume at one point. She goes to visit him in the hospital, but he's got his jaw wired shut, so he can't exactly talk, and she's not getting much information out of him, because the only thing he pretty much wants to write down on the little notepad he's given is don't trust him. So she decides to go find her husband and figure a way out of this situation. So at the apartment, she's talking to him through the door and eventually convinces him to come with her, telling him that she's pregnant. Which we found out at the beginning of the movie, by the way. I just didn't think it was important enough to bring up until now. So they chain Kent up in the basement, and then immediately goes and leaves him unattended, just in time for Jack to get home early from school after a good bullying session. Which, don't bully people, it's bad. But yeah, Jack left school early, and Kent convinces Jack to let him free. Kent then goes to the bully's house, just walks up in the dude's home in the middle of him shit-talking Jack and Kent to his online friends. So, the timing couldn't have been better. Or worse. And then turns that boy into a splatter on the wall. Meg comes home to find out that Kent is free, in demon mode, and their dog is also now a clown demon because he, ate that nose earlier. So the dog leaps at Meg, trying to attack her, when all of a sudden his head is chopped off by Carlson? Yeah, he's apparently out of the hospital and fine now. He tells Meg that the only way to get the suit off without cutting the head off the body is for the demon to eat 5 children for each month of winter, as mentioned in the thing, and then they'll be able to take the suit off. When he wore the suit previously, by the way, Meg ends up finding video footage of him as a demon. It's really cool. But anyway, when he kind of became a demon, Carlson's brother, who worked at a children's hospital, would take kids on the verge of death to him to basically be sacrificed as food for this demon. After 5 of them were eaten, they were able to get the suit off of him. And then it was kept in that trunk in the attic ever since. Meg is a little horrified by this and insists there has to be some sort of other way, but either way they need to go find Kent. And they think to themselves, where would a clown go where he would be completely unnoticed? And they decide Chuck E. Cheese, which actually ends up being correct, but I'm pretty sure Chuck E. Cheese isn't necessarily known for having clowns. Giant talking rodents? Yeah. Chickens? Yeah. Italian chefs? Sure. Giant buildings that talk? Yeah. This purple thing? Sure. But not necessarily clowns. But sure, okay, let's go with that. They drop Jack off at Meg's father's house and go there, and Kent's been snacking on kids like candy at Chuck E. Cheese. After some disembodied limbs come rolling down the slide and everyone freaks out and leaves, Meg actually gets a chance to talk to her husband, and well, he's almost in full demon mode now, not really acting like Kent anymore, and he tells her that he just needs one more child, so he's eaten 4 at this point. If she can bring him one more child, then she'll have her husband back. He tells her to meet her at at like a romantic spot from their history, which turns out to be in the middle of the woods. Completely torn up by the situation she's found herself in, Meg goes to her car to contemplate her options when a kid basically falls into her lap. There's a little girl that's like knocking on her window. She was like, "Hey, I'm scared. I remember you from the dentist and you made me feel safe." Which, by the way, this kid looks way older than what she's talking like, but we'll just go with it. Meg agrees to give her a ride home. The girl doesn't notice that she's not home until after Meg drives her into the middle of the woods and she steps out of the car. But by then, Meg slams the door shut and basically waits on the clown to come collect his prey. The girl's freaking out because she swears she hears something in the woods, and she's pounding on the door, screaming, crying, begging Meg to let her back in. And it's not until the last minute where Meg opens the door and finds out that the noise that they were hearing approaching was actually a cop car. But still freaked out, the little girl runs away, which was a perfect excuse for the cop to kind of leave Meg there in this very sketchy situation and go chase after the girl to make sure she's okay. So this gives Meg a great chance to go back to her house. Meanwhile, Meg's dad is pissed at Kent and he wants to go talk to him face to face. So he's bringing Jack along with him, and they're all pretty much at the house at the same time, and Meg walks in just in time to see her dad get murdered by this giant clown demon that Kent has now become. He walks over to Meg looking more demonic than ever and is actually about to rip the baby out of her stomach. But then Jack makes a noise somewhere, and deciding he didn't want his last meal to be too undercooked, he decides to go after him instead. So he knocks Meg out and then goes chasing after Jack, who is hiding under some stairs, and after some suspense, the clown ends up finding him. And just in the nick of time, Meg comes back in and saves the day by wrapping a chain around his neck and tying him to the water heater. She's about to actually finish him off with a sledgehammer when Kent's voice comes out of the clown saying, "Help me." Then Meg's like, "Sweetie," talking to Jack, "go get the book and more chains." And Jack's like, "Why?" And she's like, "Don't you want to help your daddy?" He's like, "Dude, that's not daddy." And then the clown's angry and goes and like roars at them, and then Meg just hits him in the face with the sledgehammer, nearly knocking his head off. Nearly. Looking like nearly headless Nick over here. The clown's still alive, so she picks up the head with her bare hands and yanks it off the rest of the way, leaving rainbow blood splattered all over the floor. And the movie ends with the costume and the wig in evidence bags at the police station, just waiting for someone to dare to wear it again. So that was Clown. It's not a perfect movie by any means, but it's a damn fun time if you ask me. It reminds me a lot of the Goosebumps book, The Haunted Mask, where a girl, Carly Beth, finds, well, a haunted mask and puts it on, and it starts to kind of fuse with her flesh after a while and changes her personality and everything. But eventually the power of love saves her. Kent was not so lucky. But being such an iconic story for me as a child, and also having the aesthetic of Scary Clown, this movie was right down my alley. I also really dig the lore behind this suit. How it's not a suit, it's demon skin and hair, and it comes from an ancient creature that would feed on children, and through time we've just kind of changed the legend to what a clown is known for today, and we've come to interpret it as like some sort of goofy character. It's something that I could see happening in the real world with true events or even like fairy tales of sorts, kind of like Ring Around the Rosie representing the plague supposedly, and Little Red Riding Hood being pretty morbid about a wolf that's just eating a family and pretending to be them. And you know, now we just tell that story to our children. It had me dying to know more about the lore, and I found myself after the first time I watched this movie trying to Google pictures of ancient clown-like monsters, but really only finding things like from this movie. And I also love how this came from a fake trailer that a passionate filmmaker just uploaded to YouTube, and it ended up becoming its own full-length feature film. Like, that's awesome and incredibly inspiring. I only wish we got to see a little bit more of the demon clown in its full form. When we do see it, it's pretty dark. I do love the use of practical effects throughout the entire film. There's very little CGI used, and it looks awesome. The rainbow blood was also a really neat touch. I do think that the clown dog could have looked a little cooler, because it just kind of looks like the normal dog, but with some flour on its face. But hey, with the budget this movie had and what they did with it, I'm not going to complain. I would definitely be interested in seeing more entries to this cinematic universe, but if it just stays as a standalone film, I get that. That's still pretty cool to me. I think if you like things like Trick or Treat or Krampus, you might enjoy this movie. Again, I believe it's available for free right now on Pluto, at the time of filming at least. I also appreciate you guys watching this video. Please give it a like, feel free to subscribe, and also check out some of my other content. Recently I began uploading a new animated series called Malcolm and Dave. It's a horror comedy about a nice but lonely guy named Dave who decides he wants to adopt a cat, Malcolm. That cat ends up being a serial killer though, and you know, their shenanigans. Right now, only the first episode is out. By the time you're watching this, episode 2 should be out very soon, if not already. But I think that's going to be about it for me today, though. So, again, thank you guys for watching. Have a happy Halloween.